schedule this year, so take away another game. That's 9.6. Key losses, you take away about a half game for those players, and you give them right back for the draft and free agency, another half game. Boom, you are at 9.6 projected wins. Vegas's win total is 9.5. That is no play for the odds breakers. Whatever. All right. Next team is the Minnesota Vikings. They had 8.5 wins last year, and it's 8.5 because they tied. It was 8 wins, really, 8-7-1, but you got to give them a half game for the tie. Their Pythag was only 8.11, and so they're about an 8.3. The Vikings, missed the playoffs this year. Were really good the year before, as you remember. They should have won. They got beat by the Eagles really bad in the NFC Championship game, and then couldn't even make the playoffs last year. They have a medium schedule this year. Their at-large games are against the Falcons and the Seahawks. Okay, their key losses: defensive tackle, nose tackle Sheldon Richardson, center or guard, whatever, Nick Easton, he was flexible, Latavius Murray, Tom Compton at guard, and Andrew Sadejo. Their key additions are running back Amir Abdullah, Josh Klein, defense tackle Shamar Stephen. They drafted a bunch of offensive linemen like Garrett Bradbury, Drew Samia, inside linebacker Cameron Smith, and a bunch of other guys. They actually had a ton of picks in the draft, which I like. Now, the Vikings had a medium schedule, but I think it's closer to medium hard. They're at-large games, like I said, Falcons and Seahawks. Pretty tough. They did pretty well in the draft, but they failed to replace Sheldon Richardson. I think that is a huge mistake. Sheldon Richardson was a beast, okay? And Andrew Sadejo, he was injured a little bit at the end, but he was still a beast. They didn't really replace him with anything vile. I really love how they beef off your offensive line. And if you know me, you know I love the trenches, and I think it's the most important part of the game. And I also like how they picked up Josh Klein. So I think the Amir Abdullah and Latavius Murray was more of a wash. This team wasn't really that injured last year either, but they still couldn't get over the hump. So let's break it down here. You have the Vikings, 8.3 average Pythag. Take away a half game because they weren't that injured last year. Then they had a medium easy schedule last year. It wasn't that hard. And you take away another half game, you are at 7.3. This year's schedule is 0, so no adjustment. Their key losses for Sheldon Richardson and Andrew Sadejo, I took it minus 0.5. Draft and free agency, I gave him a half game back at 0.5. So what did we come up with? 7.3 wins. Their Vegas win total is 9. That's 1.7 difference. So, looking at their hard schedule and the fact that I really don't believe in their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, I'm actually going to make this play. I'm playing the Minnesota Vikings under 9 wins. I think there's a very slight chance they get to 9. A lot of things are going to line up, but I really don't believe in Kirk Cousins. And so make sure when you take this under 9, you go ahead and tweet Kirk Cousins to let him know that we are betting against him.
You like that? You like that?
All right, next we have the Green Bay Packers. Their win total is a whopping 9.5. And that is a big difference from last year. They're at 6 wins last year. Okay? 6 wins. And I got to give them 6.5 because they had that tie with the Vikings. But still, that's a pretty big difference here. Their schedule is medium. Their at-large games are against the Panthers and the 49ers. The Niners should be better with Garoppolo this year. Their key losses are defensive tackle Muhammad Wilkerson, but he was out most of the year anyway. Outside linebacker and edge rusher Clay Matthews, linebacker Nick Perry, and Randall Cobb in slot, inside linebacker Jake Ryan. Their key additions, linebacker edge rusher Zadarius Smith and linebacker Preston Smith. Adrian Amos from the Bears, offensive tackle Billy Turner, and tight end Mercedes Lewis. Who they drafted, as you know, Rashawn Gary, didn't like him. Safety Darnell Savage, which was kind of a reach. Center or guard Elgin Jenkins, I believe, Elton. And then a bunch of guys, about 4 or 5 other guys. So I don't love who the Packers drafted in the first round. Like I said, Rashawn Gary, he's very overrated. Only 10 sacks in 3 years playing for Michigan. And I think the reason he was still high is because he was the number one recruit out of high school. So his name stuck. But I just think he was a bad pick. I didn't see him do much against Ohio State, Notre Dame, a couple other games there. The Packers didn't really find an impact receiver to replace Cobb, so Aaron Rodgers might be complaining a little bit. They have a new coach, obviously, and Matt LaFleur. Huge fight between Rodgers and, McCarthy the last few years, what we're hearing. Losing Clay Matthews and replacing him with Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, the way I look at this is you start with 6.5 wins. Their Pythag was 6.78, so 6.6 is the average. You give them a half game because they were kind of injured last year. So I give them a half game back. Their receivers were banged up, their defense was banged up, and then their schedule was really easy last year. So I take a game away. And their strength of schedule is just based upon how well the other teams did. And their projected strength of schedule is medium, so it's a 0. So we're sitting here at 5.6 games. I don't think they lost much, so I gave them a 0. They didn't lose anything. I'm not no effect there. But their draft and free agency, I think they gained a half a game. So that brings me to 7.6 projected wins. And their win total is 9.5. But here's the kicker, and here's the problem. Do you really want to bet against Aaron Rodgers? Especially when he has a chip on his shoulders and he knows he has to prove to everybody that it was Mike McCarthy and not him now that he has a new coach. Well, I'm going to leave that one up to you. But my total is 7.6 and Vegas is 9.5. That's kind of where it came up to. The Detroit Lions. Their 2018 record was 6. The Lions are sneaky, man. They always are. It's like their win total is always between 7 and 8.5. When you believe the team's going to suck, they do good. And when the team you think they're going to do really good, they suck. It's just really strange with this team. So their Vegas season win total is 7. Their schedule is medium. At-large games against the Buccaneers and the Cardinals. Gotta love that. Key losses. Defensive end Ezekiel Ansah retired. Guard TJ Lang retired. Safety Glover Quinn. LeGarrette Blount. And a couple tight ends you never heard of. Key additions. Trey Flowers. Like that defensive end. Justin Coleman. A couple Patriots there. Rashawn Melvin at cornerback. Tight end Jesse James. Danny Amendola. Couple other guys. They drafted a tight end, T.J. Hawkinson, that blocks and catches really well. Linebacker, Jahali Tavi. Safety, Will Harris. And about 7 or 8 other guys. They had a lot of draft picks. So they did pretty well in the draft, and they did well in free agency getting some old Patriots for Matt Patricia's defense. He's got familiarity with them, being the old Patriots defensive coordinator. I think losing Ezekiel Ansah will definitely hurt. And they didn't do a lot to help their offensive line because Stafford was kind of getting killed there, and I don't think they did enough. Their defense should definitely take a step forward here, and I do like that. I also think that they should gain at least a half game for the schedule here. Well, actually, let's just get right to it. I had their 2018 record. Of course, they won 6 games, but their Pythag, with the amount of points they scored, was 6.77. So it averages to 6.4 where we're starting. Not giving them or taking anything away from injuries. Their schedule was medium last year. That's a 0. Their projected strength of schedule was medium, so that's a 0. Their key losses, really nothing to write home about, and I gave them a 0 for key losses there. I suppose Ezekiel Ansah is big, but, replacing them with Trey Flowers and everything should be, they should be fine there. I'm actually giving them a half point for all their draft picks and their free agency moves, a half a game. So their Vegas win total is 7, and I'm at 6.9. So this is absolutely not a play. So there you have it. That's how I do NFL season win totals. And, it's kind of a mathematic approach, calculated approach. Now, you also have to, like I said, and I've done this for every team, looked at their schedule and circle wins and losses, look for bad spots. If a team's going to have 4 away games in a row, that could be painful. If a team's going to be traveling back and forth for 3-4 weeks in a row, those last 2 games could be tough. So you got to look at that a little bit. But been pretty successful doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it. Now, without further ado, let's bring on Marco D'Angelo. And now I'm very excited to welcome back one of the best and most renowned horse racing handicappers that we know, Mr. Marco D'Angelo from RagerTalk.com. You can follow Marco on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. How you doing, Marco?
Oh, I'm doing good. Hoping for no rain and no objections and a clean race on Saturday.
Oh, my goodness. Hoping for a little bit better of a situation that we had than the Kentucky Derby, right?
Absolutely. That was just craziness, and it's a shame that it had to happen on the biggest stage.
Yeah, and we unfortunately have to recap a little bit about that before we get into the Preakness, just so we can educate the listeners and myself about what's going on with this. So first of all, I think most people have heard the answer to this, but did they get the right call?
In my opinion, yes. The way the rules are stated, if you interfere with another horse, changing that horse's progress, that's interference, and you have to be put behind that horse. What's caused the confusion with people is that the horse that got placed the winner was not actually interfered with by Maximum Security. Maximum Security interfered with War of Will, who consequently interfered with Long Range Toddy. And the way the rules state is you have to be placed behind the worst finishing horse that was interfered with by your actions. That's what took Maximum Security completely off the board and had to be placed behind Long Range Toddy, who finished way back.
Is that why the stewards took so long in taking a look at it?
Yes. They had to, one, the magnitude of the race starting with. I mean, there's so much money involved in the Kentucky Derby. Then, the placings there. And you're talking about, this is a decision that not only are we talking about, millions and millions of dollars changing hands at Churchill that first Saturday in May with whatever their decision's going to be, but the ramifications of the decision. Maximum Security at the time was an undefeated horse, would have been an undefeated horse heading to the Preakness. If that horse would have went on and won a Triple Crown, not saying that it would have, the amount of money that horse would be worth in the breeding shed just, magnifies, it multiplies. So you're talking about so much more money down the road. A lot of things, moving parts there. But it just the way that it went down, and then not getting a full reasoning. That's one of the problems that made this so much worse. And people, clearly, was Maximum Security the best horse that day? Absolutely, no question about it. He was the best horse that day, deserved to win. But because whether it was the horse seeing something on the track, and with all of the puddles that were on the track that day, horse could have seen anything that would have made him move. If you saw, the water was just running down to the infield. I mean, there were so many different, little streams on that track. I'm really surprised that they weren't able to have the track in a little bit of better condition so that you didn't have all of the puddles of water that were laying on the track. And that will spook some horses sometimes. And remember, these are 3-year-olds. Most of these horses have only raced between 5 and 8 times in their career. So they haven't seen everything and experienced everything, and it caused problems.
I get you. Absolutely, I get you. So what it felt like to the novice, horse racing, just anybody watching the Derby, is that, for example, it felt like this happens all the time and doesn't always get called. And I'll give you an example, kind of like you're playing in a basketball game. You're down by 1 point. There's 10 seconds left. So you have the ball. You're the point guard. You're about getting ready to run your play. And then an official blows a 3 seconds in the lane violation on you with 10 seconds left in the championship game. So, and I don't know if you
sounds like sour grapes there.
yeah, that is sour grapes. Absolutely. But there's a lot of